Right, so what we have here is the Dyson DC08. The problem we got with this is that when you apply power to it, the motor's not working at all. It should be one of two things. It's either the switch or it's the motor itself. So the first thing we're going to do is just pull this apart, and then we're going to check the switch out, and then we're going to look at the motor. So the first thing that we've got to do is take the wheels off, and we just need a screwdriver to do that. Just put the screwdriver in behind the wheel, just pop straight off like that. So the next part is to take the back off, and as you can see here, we've pulled a couple of meters of cord out, 1.5 meters or so, and then we've got to take out these screws, right, that actually secure that in. Alright, so what we're going to do now is take the screws out. Now these are a torque 15, so we just undo these screws, then we can just slide the back off. Now there are 5 screws to take out, so you've got these 2 here, you've got this one up here, and we've got the 2 torque screws down here, so we'll take those out, and that'll free up the whole back section of the unit. So the next part we've got to remove is this back section, so we've just got to lift it up and just let it slide back. And now we're going to take that off and get it out of the way. So we're just going to take this filter out so it's clear. Just put that over with the wheels. Now to take this part off, we just leave it out on one side and just pop it off. So we want to remove this whole section now, but we still have one screw right located up there. So again, it's a torque screw, so we'll have to take it out. We've got that out. Alright, now before you take this off, make sure you pull about 1 meter or so of cord out, because otherwise you're going to have difficulty getting, getting that to sit back again. And now you can remove that and just move it away from the unit. You can see your tensioning system, right, for your cord, and your motor is inside this casing here. So now we're going to remove the switch. That just slides out, it just sits on a small ledge in there, and as you can see here, it's attached to some connectors, so we just got to remove the connectors and then we can check the switch. So as you can see, we've taken off the connectors, now we've got the switch out, and now we can check the switch to see if it's operating properly. So we're just going to do a resistance check on the switch. So you just attach your multimeter leads, and if all is working well, that should be open circuit, and if you press the switch down, it should be a short circuit. So the switch is working properly, so the switch is not the problem. Alright, so we've got our switch clear when we reconnected the switch. So now we're going to take the whole motor casing out, and that will just sit as such. You can see it's still attached to the vacuum cleaner itself via your cable here. Now we could take all that off and disconnect it, but there's no point. Now we've got to take this top lid off of this casing, and once we get that done, then we can lift the motor out. So what we've done is we've just gone around with each of the 4 lugs that are securing the top lid, and we've loosened those off, and now we can take that out, and as you can see here, it comes out quite easily. This is the motor itself, so we can now lift the motor out. You can see here, right, the motor itself, and that's attached via the internal leads. So it should be brown and red together and black and blue together. So you've got to remember that. So as you can see, we've got the motor taken out of the housing. We've got it disconnected. These are connections here, fit onto these two. And now we can check the motor out. So as you can see here, we've taken out the old motor, and as you can see there's a lot of carbon build up on and around the motor. We've got the stator, and then we've got the rotor which turns around in here, and part of that rotor system is the commutator. And you've got a lot of carbon build up on the commutator itself, and also in these small gaps right between each of the segments there. So as you can see here, with reference to the commutator, you have your carbon brushes, and they should be sitting flat and square onto the commutator like that. Now what we've found is that one of the brushes wasn't doing that. Now with reference to this brush here, you can see that there's a big gap under here, and this whole brush is basically disintegrated because it's worn right down to the base and basically fallen apart, and that's why the motor's not working. So what I've done here is taken the brushes off the motor unit itself, and you can definitely see the difference between the two brushes. This one's got a kind of a concave shape to it, which means it's rubbing and moving onto the commutator. You can see this one here is just absolutely fallen apart, and that's the end of the travel. This one's almost at the end of the travel. You can see there that there's not much left to go. Now these brushes would have been a lot further back down in here, and they would have just progressively moved forward as they're worn out. Probably thinking, well, we could have just replaced the carbon brushes and the whole motor's working again, but it's not quite that simple, because what we'd need to do is to take the rotor out, and this commutator here would have to be skimmed and undercut, and you'd have to do that on a lathe or something like that. The problem being is that this is a seal motor, so you can't get the rotor out effectively to be able to carry out that process. So with this motor, as you can see, it's been stamped around the edges, and this whole section here is sealed onto this area here, and you've got to get this off to get into here, which means then you'll be able to pull the whole rotor out. Unfortunately you can't do that, and it's basically a throwaway item. So what we've done, we've had to order a new motor for the vacuum cleaner, and we're just waiting for that to come in, and then we'll replace it. So we finally got the new motor, so what we're doing now is just fitting the motor back into the housing. As you can see here, it's keyed, and that matches the keying down the bottom here. The easiest way to do that is to take the casing out, and then wrap your wires around and then feed your motor down. So as you can see here, we've got the motor into the bottom half of the casing or the housing, and as you can see here, there's an arrow on the top part of the housing, and that's got to point to the actual switch side. So now we'll place that over as such, and then we'll lock that down, and that'll lock the whole thing in. Now we've got to insert the housing into the base of the vacuum cleaner, and there's some guides on the end here which have got to slot into these slots here on both sides. So that's our next step. Alright, so we've got the motor and housing into the base of the vacuum cleaner, and the next part is to align the switch properly, and that's quite easy to do. It sits into a little recess and just sits there like that. Alright, so what we're doing now is putting on the back casing to the actual vacuum cleaner. The important part here is that we have the power cable retraction system here, and this here is what actually releases it and allows the cable to be pulled in, and that's all got to line up with the switch that you press on the back casing. And as you can see here, this has got to be vertical when the actual unit is sitting down flat, and it's in a little keyed position, which is easy enough to see. If this ever comes out, it's all got to be lined up properly. But make sure that's vertical, make sure that's all sitting down flat, make sure the switch is in the proper recess and sitting properly, and now we should be able to put the back casing on. And when you're putting the back casing on to the actual base of the vacuum cleaner, it's easier to do that when you have the whole system sitting upright, and that way you'll be able to get it all to align properly. And once you've got it on, it should be fine. The next step we've got to do, and the first screw to go in, is this one here. Now these are torque screws, and that's number 15, so that's the first thing we'll be putting in. So we'll put the screw in here. We've got 2 on this side, 2 on the other side, and there's another one just up the top here. So we'll put the rear filter in. As you can see here, it just goes in. That's what we've washed. It's just been sitting on something for the moment. That will puff out again. And the other part that's got to go on is right this back section here, and that just clips on. So you've got to kind of lever that over and and push it on like such, and then that will close up. All right, the front filter, as you can see, and then this part here, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. All right, just got to line up with the side section here and clipped in the bottom down here, and you just press it down. So we've got the main assembly put back together. The wheels will go on the side. They just press in and clip in, which I'll show you a bit later on. We can actually test the unit now. Right, so we just put power onto the unit. Now we'll switch it on just to make sure our switch works also. And it's definitely drawing air in, so it must be working. So as you can see here on the wheels, it's just some ridges that fit inside here. You just hold it in, you line it up, and you just push it on, and you do that for both wheels. We've got both wheels on now, and as you can see here, they're working as they should.